Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I forgot to use this mic earlier to speak to you, but welcome to the Marcus Garvey Library, and a great big welcome from the Friends of Marcus Garvey Library. It's great to see so many people using this part of the library, which we used to occupy before the refurbishment in 2015.
Yeah,
so I'm just going to explain to you, you know, we're really lucky today. We've got 3 excellent candidates for the upcoming local elections. We have Councillor Zena Brabazon. No, you can say something later.
Not yet, Zena.
You have to introduce yourself because he's replacing somebody else. Mark Blake, yeah, Mark Blake. Councillor Mark Blake.
And Viv Ross, I'm here instead of Scott, who's not very well at the moment.
Yeah, I didn't recognise him when he came in. Okay, so we've got a plan of action today for the next 2 hours, and basically I'm going to sort of speak to you for 5 minutes to talk to you about the Friends of Marcus Garvey Library, how we got started, and then the candidates are going to speak for 5 minutes each about libraries, what libraries mean to them, any policy ideas that they have. To get things started, I've got a couple of questions, which I just asked the candidates, and then that's for about 10 minutes, or I don't expect it to be longer than that. And then the main event basically is you. You are the people who are going to be asking these candidates to justify why they need your vote, why they should be councillors again after the May, basically. Then we're going to have some closing remarks at the end from the candidates in case they've thought of something that they hadn't said before, and then we'll close, basically. Now, today I'm passing around one of these. If you could start with Clive, and basically if you could just put your contact details on that, and then the person on the very sort of last row, if you could hand it in at the very end.
Shall I get it?
Yeah, get started. And we're doing that to try to get sort of more members. We do have a regular core of people who attend our meetings, and we have over 300 people actually on our mailing list. So we know that there's a lot of people who are there and who support us but may not come to meetings. So we have people like Margaret Burr, for instance, who sends out all our material, but she's never attended a meeting. She just said, I'm a member of the community and I want to support you in any way that I can. So that's important. So I think another thing, if you could pass this, it would be great if you could actually join the library if you're not already a member. So basically it's quite simple to do. I'm not a techie. I don't have a smartphone. I'm probably the only person left without a smartphone.
No.
But I understand. Oh, Penny, you don't have one. Sue, you don't have one. Okay. But I understand you can just click on this. So I'm going to pass this around. And if you're not a member, please join the library, because we need as many people to join the library as possible, basically.
Can I take it?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll get started. I'll introduce myself. I'm Jasmine Taylor, the chair of the Friends of Marcus Garvey Library. And I got involved in the library purely by chance. I dropped into the library one day, and there was a group of mothers in the children's section, and they were concerned about the refurbishment. I knew nothing about the refurbishment, what was going on. And it turned out that the refurbishment, once the group was formed and we began to understand what was going on, the refurbishment meant that we actually lost 50% of the space in the library. Now, where we are sitting now in this room is space that we used to occupy. So it's really important that you understand that. What happened was that after they did the refurbishment, they moved customer services into this location. Now, we're in here today because we sort of asked the manager very kindly. He said, oh yes, you can use this space. But as you're probably aware, they are planning to move other council offices in this space. And we've actually suffered quite badly as far as events are concerned, particularly because we don't have this space normally. And as you can see, the normal space that we have is the room across the way, basically, and it'd be too small for all the people in this room. I'd like to say we've been a friends group basically for 10 years now, and I was thinking yesterday, we have had some achievements. It is rather a sort of uphill battle with the council. It can feel like that sometimes, but we have had some achievements as far as trying to make the library, to enhance the library service, and to try to make better use of the space within the library currently. So I think it's important that you also understand that as a friends group, we don't charge anybody. Anybody is free to come to the meetings. Anybody who comes to the library door can just attend our friends group meetings. And that's the sort of group that we are. We have a lot of people, you know, people like Mary Yaku, Lucy, Zara, Jason, Beth, people who come for years and basically as residents, they've got amazing ideas, they've got amazing ways in which we can work with the council. I must say as well that as we work very hard to have a good relationship with Haringey Council. For instance, the council has recently asked us to ask everybody in all the libraries, all the friends groups, to produce a development plan, and we've done that. So they know what the residents would prefer to have, the sort of services that they would like to have in this library. Now, on each of the chairs, you will see the last page of the development plan, which basically outlines, you know, our objectives, our priorities, and you'll see that right on the top of that is the children's desk. There were things that we lost when we lost 50% of the space. We lost a children's desk, basically. So we're the only main branch library without one. Wood Green has one, and Hornsey has one as well. So we don't have. I'm going to ask a question about that later, anyway. So, and there's also our objections to the fact that the library was put in the latest draft plan, draft local plan. So that's more for information, because I know that most people are not going to be able to wade their way through the draft plan because it's enormous. So that's just a section that relates to our library. And then there's the other bit of paper there are the objections that we as a group, we sat down, we had a meeting, and this is how we work, sometimes a little bit slowly, but we have these regular meetings every 2 months, and sometimes we have smaller meetings on a more regular basis when problems turn up, and basically people sit around the table and try to work out how to go forward. So that's how we work as a group, and we're trying, you know, it'd be great if more people could join, because very often people come through the door and they've just got amazing ideas and you know, ways that we can move forward very quickly. So it's really, really important that you think or consider trying to join. Okay. So just before I finish, I mean, I am a little bit obsessive about the lack of space in the library, but that was a major issue when we started, and we've observed how it's effectively meant that certain events are no longer able to be held in the library, and at one point the library you know, is very much community orientated. Yes, I'll just speak to that very. Yeah, we have discovered, as members of the Friends group, that different departments somehow seem to be completely on different planets. So at one point, the whole of this building was run by Haringey Council. Then at another point, it was sort of privatised, and we had, I think, Fusion came in. and now the whole of the building again is run by the council. But it seems as if there does seem to be a really severe lack of communication between the different departments, basically. When you actually need to get something done, or something that affects the whole building, like the roof, for instance, that's when you find out how difficult things are.
So there is a meeting room on the other side of the building?
It's called a function room.
Yeah.
It's called a function room. At the moment, they're extending. They have plans to extend the gym, basically, and
Not just the gym.
so, you know, the library. You know, before I finish, I would say that psychologically, we feel that the library has been almost forgotten or ignored. Maybe it's because we don't pay membership fees. People coming through the door don't do that, and it seems as if any time that they're looking for any spare space, they come to the library and try to use space within the library. So we've lost a lot of space already, and we feel as residents who support the library that we're basically hanging on the side by our fingernails of this enormous building, and there's a lot of space in there in the back which is you know, not utilised properly, that they could use instead. Okay, so has anybody got any more questions they would like to ask about the Friends group?
Could I just ask if people speak, can they speak up? Either my hearing's going or the acoustics are poor. It's very hard to hear.
Yes, okay, yeah. If you could sort of shout. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. Can I just say that I'm in the process of establishing a Friends of the Leisure Centre group, like a sister group to the Friends of the Library, because it's all one thing, really. And if anybody's interested in that, can you let me know? Or maybe...
Can you say your name?
My name's Sarah Hall, and because we're also losing a lot of leisure centre space as well. Some of it is being converted to offices, and the facilities there are being downgraded hugely, as well as the library facilities. So there's going to be 2 Friends groups, and please let me know if you are interested in the leisure centre as well as the library.
Okay, so anybody else, any more questions? Right, brilliant. Okay, so what we'll do now is to move on to the candidates, and what I would like to, and I think really what the people sitting in front of you would like to find out is what libraries mean to you. I know that one candidate was actually running the libraries at one point in the borough, so inevitably she will have quite a lot of experience. But I'd like to speak for 5 minutes, basically, on how valuable you think libraries are, why you consider that they're important. I was just discussing, I think, with the chair for today, that there's been a report published a couple of years ago by University of East Anglia, and they have discovered that each library produces £1 million in value for their local communities. So it's they give back enormous amount of the funding that they receive. Right, so I'm just also, Zara is going to be is going to actually start to time people, and she's been chosen because she can be quite good at this, ruthless. And basically, so for the candidates, if you could speak just for 5 minutes, and 2 minutes before the end, Zara will let you know that you've only got 2 minutes. She'll wave. Yeah. So do you want to start?
Oh, it's up to you. What do you pick?
No, I don't. Come on. Who would like to start?
I don't mind. Ladies first.
Okay. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah. My name's Zena Brabazon. I'm a Labour councillor, and I'm a Labour candidate in the upcoming elections, which is, of course, why you're having these hustings. Thank you to the Friends of Marcus Garvey for organising, probably the first in a series. Sorry?
Hold it a bit closer to you.
The first in a series, is that better?
Yeah.
Of hustings, I imagine, will happen across the borough. I've been a councillor for Haringey Ward since 2016, so that's going up for 10 years. I was also a councillor of 2010, 2014, for 4 years in St Anne's Ward. So I've got a long history of being a councillor, and for my personal background, I did work for 20 years in Haringey as head of the early years service, the play service, and subsequently I did a lot of work in regeneration, bringing in millions and millions of pounds to the borough, a lot of which went, I'm pleased to say, to what I would call soft regeneration, that is our libraries, notably the library hall at St Anne's, which we've used regeneration money to rebuild. When I ran Sure Start in this borough, I was absolutely committed to working with the libraries, and I absolutely understand Jasmine's point that sometimes left hands and right hands don't know what they're doing. I experienced that as an officer and as a councillor. That is obviously sometimes true. This is a huge organisation. However, what you want me to talk about libraries, in 2018 I was the cabinet member for libraries. I was in the same cabinet as Mark, and I made sure that the proposals at that time in 2018, which were to reduce our libraries and close them, did not happen. And I take a lot, I don't always want to bang my own drum, but I do take a lot of credit for that because I stopped it. And I said at the time, I thought the important thing was to invest in our libraries. And there was about a £4.95 million capital budget that had been set aside even by the previous administration, which had been responsible for what Jasmine has described here at Marcus Garvey, to refurbish the branch libraries across the borough. And we made that happen, and we have made that happen. We have now spent all the 4.9 million. We've invested in Stroud Green, Haringey, Muswell Hill. You probably say, well, what about Marcus Garvey? Marcus Garvey, although you may not disagree, did have investment, but not perhaps the investment 10 years, 11 years ago people would have wanted, but we can't turn that clock back. But we have spent nearly 5 million improving our libraries, making them much more modern, bringing in IT, putting in access, for example, at Muswell Hill. St Anne's has had a makeover, Stroud Green, Coombscroft, Alexandra, the 9 libraries across the borough. And I am really proud that we spent that money. What do they mean to me? They mean everything to me. I grew up going to the library every single week in the 50s because that's what you did. That's where you learned, that's where you explored. And it was the most important thing to me and to my sister and to all my friends. It's about equity, and no more so than ensuring our east of the borough libraries are open. So I'm really pleased, even I'm sure the reduction in house will come up, that Marcus Garvey is open 7 days a week. And that's because it's more important we have libraries open. If we've got to reduce, that we target our resources more to the east than the west. And that is what, having checked the library hours this morning, I can see that that is the case. It's a big challenge for libraries. Hundreds of libraries have closed in this country. I've checked those numbers today, and I think it's over possibly 350 across the whole country, looking at the record from the Library Association. Boroughs like Lewisham reduced from 12 to 4. Enfield is closing 7. In Haringey, we haven't closed our libraries. I know it's a bone of contention, but we've worked not to close, keep them open and invest to try and make some money by inviting groups to use them rather than having derelict rooms, by changing what we do, because we have to face the fact the internet has changed everything. So digital is really important. E-books, e-borrowing, having in the library Liquid Logic, the music project for young people, here at Coombscroft and St Anne's, targeting music production for young people. In other words, we're on the up. Just to finish, we've got the Borough of Culture coming in 2027, and libraries will be at the heart of that programme. And we're already working to create and curate a fantastic programme for that period. It is really exciting, and I have to say, I came into Marcus Garvey today and I thought it looked lovely. Right.
Thank you.
Okay, afternoon everybody. My name's Mark Blake. I'm Green Party candidate here in Tottenham Central, the ward where the library and the leisure centre are based. I'm going to, and excuse me if I'm kind of peering down at my notes on my phone, but I'm going to sort of quickly kind of run through some responses to the documents that Jasmine fed into us. I then want to say something very briefly in terms of the financial position of the council, which I think there needs to be a greater understanding of within the community. And finally, just a few points in terms of where the Green Party is at more generally. So thanks for the documents, Jasmine, really, really useful. One of the things which I'd absolutely concur with what Zena said is that, you know, I've spent quite a bit of time recently and over the years sitting in this library, you know, attending meetings here or attending meetings in the adjacent community. And just as an observer in terms of the mix of people that use the library, the multi-use, it's an absolutely critical community hub. And that's even more so in terms of what we've seen over the sort of previous decades in terms of the reduction of community spaces and the pressures that community organisations are facing to keep those community spaces open. I just want to come back on the local plan proposal to demolish and rebuild the library. I personally would oppose this. We haven't had a kind of discussion on the kind of details of the local plan within the local Green Party or amongst local candidates. I would suggest residents should be wary, as I know the history of the library, the issues around the relocations of services here and reductions in space have contributed, I think, to a deterioration of trust. And there's a whole history, which quite often bureaucracies, you get officers come, officers go, but there's a history with a lot of this, and quite often that kind of erodes in terms of the kind of organisational memory, if you like. And I think it's really important that your local politicians are fully aware of that history. So that's a really kind of key thing for me. I just wanted to speak on the development plan as well. I think there's some really excellent suggestions in there, a lot of which wouldn't cost the council any money. I can't understand why I go to Haringey Library and I regularly see art exhibitions held there, why the same can't be done here. So I think officers really need to kind of explain that. The homework club should be an absolute essential. Many young people in Tottenham don't have the luxury of their own bedroom to study in. Overcrowding is a huge issue, obviously, in this part of the borough. And I think lots of people in the community would volunteer to support that. You've got a lot of retired teachers in this borough. A lot of people would love to kind of engage with something like that. So again, I think these are all things which potentially wouldn't cost anything, and there really needs to be in engagement with the Friends group to do that. So if elected, I'd like to convene a meeting with council officers and the Friends group to review the development plan. I think there are lots of good ideas in there, and as I said, I think a lot of those ideas are zero cost. On the homeless persons unit relocation, I think it's concerning. Again, I'm putting this in the context of the history of the reductions in space that have happened over the years. But I think also many of you will remember Apex House, which now is a kind of huge residential block that a previous administration knocked down and developed. And remember that the homeless persons unit was based there. And I certainly remember that. And, you know, it was a place where people were, in distressed circumstances, council officers trying to find people accommodation. Is that the sort of thing that should be based in the library? I think we need a kind of real discussion around that, and I certainly understand, their genuine concerns there. Just go back to my notes, just in terms of the points that I wanted to raise around the Green Party. Yeah, just on the financial position, the council's had good news from the government in terms of the general uplift in the funding that we receive from the government, but there is this cloud, I'm afraid, in terms of the financial position. The council is borrowing money this year. I think it's up to £57 million it's going to have to borrow from central government as an emergency fund that it's going to have to access, and that issue has to be resolved. And only central government, frankly, can resolve that issue. It's a big issue, and it potentially could affect the council deeply looking down the road. So what will the Green Party do? Well, we're finalising the manifesto. That should be released next week, so you'll be able to see the kind of details of that. I think that's it. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me here. I got the invitation right at the last minute. My name's Viv Ross. I'm standing as a candidate on the west of the borough in Fortis Green Ward, and Scott Emery, who is a councillor, is indisposed, so he asked me at the last minute to stand in for him. I'm standing for the Liberal Democrats, and one of the 7 core values of liberal democracy is community, and that's, I think, the main aspect of what we're talking about today. One thing you have to remember in Haringey is that the Labour Party have run Haringey since 1971. That's 55 years. So everything that goes on to do with the council is down to Labour. We're talking about libraries in particular, and Muswell Hill Library is my local library. That's where in the 1950s, that's where I used to go every week. And 15 years ago, 20 odd years ago, Haringey Council were going to close it. And it was a strong campaign led by our local MP at the time, Lynn Featherstone, who managed to keep it open. Lo and behold, 10 years later, Haringey Council have spent £1 million refurbishing it, as Zena said. And we've got a lovely lift. I use that expression with some caution because it's a glass frame on the side of a building that my mum watched being built in 1931. And so they, at one time they were going to close it. 10 years later they spent £1 million on refurbishing it, and it did need a lot of refurbishment. One of the problems, as Mark said, is that the council is in a huge amount of debt problems. He said 57 million, I think they're borrowing from the government this year. I think the figures go up and down. And over the years, Haringey Council have spent money in some ways that the Liberal Democrats don't agree with. So, for instance, new civic centre, or a hugely refurbished civic centre costing millions, at a time of austerity and cost of living crisis. Do we actually need the civic centre refurbished for that amount of money? I could go on and on about the financial problems with Haringey Council. The one thing I will say is that after 55 years, it is time for a change. And the Liberal Democrats are the opposition on the council, have been since the turn of the century, and we would be looking to look into the finances of the council and to change the whole ethos of the council. Jasmine said earlier on there's a lack of communication between departments. That's down to the councillors. They need to make sure that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. I could go on and on and on about my opposition to the Labour Council, but we haven't got long this afternoon, so I think I'll call it a day at that. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Right, thank you very much. Okay, what I do, I'll just start off the questions by, as the chair, I'll be asking 1 or 2 sort of quite specific questions, and then I'm just going to open, the questions to the floor, the meeting to the floor. So basically, when the refurbishment happened in 2015-16, we lost 50% of the library space. We also lost a children's welcome desk. It used to be the case that when young people came to the library, and parents with young children, that there were librarians there able to support parents and able to nurture the children's reading. Now, Wood Green Library still has a children's desk, often staffed by 2 librarians, and Haringey, of course, which is in the west side of the borough, also has a children's desk. For some strange reason, in 2015, the council decided to take the children's desk out of the Marcus Garvey Library, even though the library is located in the most densely part of the borough and in the part of the borough with the most need. Now, we all know that the reading age is going down. I think this is even part of, I think the Labour Party policy was to try to raise the reading age, basically. So the reading age is going down in the borough and in the country as a whole. If you look at our development plan, you will see that the first item on it is the re-establishment of a children's desk, basically, to have what we had before. So I'm asking the candidates basically whether they will support us in that. If we can have a children's desk and therefore have the same quality of service as far as young people and children coming into the library are concerned, as do children in Haringey and children in Wood Green.
Well, I don't know a huge amount about Marcus Garvey Library. I'm coming from the west of the borough, so I did ask the councillors what their views on this were, and they sent back to me that we agree with the need for a children's desk, especially linking back to the safeguarding concerns raised about the new Homelessness Prevention Hub. The points raised in the submission, offering free library membership at leisure centre users, is also definitely something we would look at.
Thank you.
I think, Jasmine, if what you said in terms of the allocation of officers, staffing children's desks is correct across the borough, then there has to be equity there. So I think that's the kind of first position to start from, and obviously you've then got to look at what the budget position is, which obviously we don't have the detail of, but I would support any proposal. I'd support any proposal that brought us to a point where there's equity. You can't have 2 children's officers in Wood Green. I presume the same in Haringey, and then nobody here at the central library serving the east of the borough.
Yes, I do agree, as you know. I mean, you and I, we've talked about this for years, so I don't disagree, and I'll do my best to...
Can you speak up, please?
I said, I don't disagree. I've talked about it for years. I used to come regularly to the Friends of Marcus Garvey Library, and I do live in Tottenham, as opposed to my colleagues. So I do feel that this is important. And actually, when I came in, I went and did a little inspection of the children's library, because I've often thought it looked a bit less lively than Haringey or Wood Green. And actually, I thought it did look really lifted up. I thought it had really improved. And I did see that there was a desk. I asked if it was the children's desk, and I was told that staff are a bit concerned because there's a draft from the door. So I think we can solve that problem by a draft excluder to get the staff to sit at the desk. I don't think that should be too difficult, and I will be following that up with the library staff as we've raised it here. So the answer is yes. And actually, I read the development plan, and I can't see there's anything there that one wouldn't want. So I hope you'll be working with the library service to implement that, because I know each library is having to produce a development plan, and our commitment is to do that with the Friends groups. And I know that Jasmine goes to all the meetings and represents everybody, and I have spoken to Emily, who's sent to say what she really is excited about is to work co-productively with each group on the development plan. So I look forward to that, hopefully in our next administration.
Right, thank you, candidates. Right, I just want one final question. Right, Haringey Council recently received a funding boost of 75.6 million from central government. the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, Steve Reed, said in a statement, "This is a chance to turn the page on a decade of cuts and for local leaders to invest in getting back what has been lost, to bring back libraries, youth services, clean streets, community hubs. However," end of quote, "Haringey has taken the decision not to use the money received from central government on libraries. Hackney Borough next door also received funding, and they decided to use their funding to stop cuts in their library service, to reverse cuts that they've made in their library service. I understand that times are hard and the issue of finance has already come up, but I want to know from the candidates whether they would go back and reconsider how that money, that 76.6 million, which they received, extra money which they received from central government, whether any of that money could be used for the libraries.
So start this end this time. I think I alternate.
I actually don't think it's extra money. It's money that the council is, for want of a better word, this year is going to be bankrupt. It's money that it's a bailout from the government. Yes, of course, I like to see it spent on part of it spent on libraries, but I think you have to remember this is not extra money. This is money that the Labour Council has, through its own administration of the finances, has not got.
Okay, thank you.
I think we'd sort of post the election. I think whoever is controlling the council will want to review all the financial arrangements sort of moving forward. I couldn't promise here today in terms of a reallocation of funds, but I think certainly a review of the budget post the election for any, whether it's whichever party's in control, I think that's going to be advisable. But obviously, you know, the key thing in terms of the Green Party is protecting frontline services. But I'll come back in terms of the financial position. That the overall financial position, there needs to be a resolution with central government in terms of the debt position with Haringey. My personal view, as I've said, the Green Party manifesto is coming out on Thursday, but my personal view, Haringey needs some kind of debt restructuring deal. That's affordable for the borough moving forward, because the current situation is not affordable, and the consequences of that are that you get a Section 114 notice, and we end up having KPMG running the council, and that will be a disaster. Yeah, So Steve Reed, I think, is being more than a little bit disingenuous in terms of that statement. Thank you.
Well, first of all, we're nowhere near a Section 114.
Can't hear you.
We are nowhere near a Section 114, and you're just escalating and making people worry, and it's nowhere near that. You were in the council chamber, Mark, when we passed the budget last week or the week before, and we have a budget which has been agreed and is now being implemented. I don't know where this £75 million figure comes from. I'll give you some facts, because I think there may be a confusion. We got, well, the local newspaper may not have it right. We got £18 million additional from central government after the leader made a special plea to Steve Reed, which put, I think, the amount of money overall that we have had additional from the government to 35 million. Enfield has had over 100 million, and this is to do with local government finance being restructured. I'm not the world expert on it, but that's the headline. We have protected all our public services in our budget. 70 to 80% of our budget goes on children's services, that is, children looked after, residential care for children who need some form of secure support or can't live in foster care. It goes in foster care, social care, child protection, all the things for which I'm delighted to say we have just got outstanding from Ofsted, which for Haringey, even if everybody isn't a Labour voter would agree, is an amazing achievement to have that accreditation. Most of our money, though, goes on adult social care. It goes on people who, and Mark knows this fully well, he was in the cabinet with Joe Ejiofor's cabinet for many years, and he knows most of our money goes on adult social care, on statutory obligations we have to meet. Why have we got a budget, such a gap in our budget? Well, you might remember the Liberals joined the Tories in 2010 in a coalition and then implemented austerity, which we suffered in this borough for 14 years and lost £143 million. Our services were ripped apart. I make no apologies for previous Labour administrations, which I don't think did the right thing, but in our administration, and particularly since 2021, we have insourced services, brought them back in-house in order to rebuild them. That includes leisure, on which we're spending millions in order to improve the leisure services, the pool and everything at Tottenham Green, notwithstanding. I think I'm really pleased to hear there's going to be a Friends group. The money, so I don't know where this 75 million comes from. I do know that £5 million was announced from the Department of Culture, Media and Sports nationally for libraries. 5 million. That's not enough. That's not good enough. And that's in a settlement for culture which goes into several tens of millions, most of which is for heritage, museums and so on. 5 million, and it is capital money. It's for digital and stuff like that. It is not for staffing. What we've tried to do is to protect the staffing, keep the budgets going. Half the councils in the country have borrowed from central government. They do that. We borrow routinely. I don't expect anybody here to be an expert in local government finance, but we can't build the council houses if we don't borrow from central government. And we've been borrowing money since 2018 in order to build council houses. And that's why we've got 1,300 new homes now, which is amazing. So people have moved off of temporary and into decent housing with all the benefit, the health benefits and social benefits that emanate from that. And I don't know how anybody could disagree with that. I'm not the greatest economist in the world, but Maynard Keynes, I think, would have supported our borrowing because that's how we stimulate our local economy.
Brilliant, thank you. The information that I received came from it's a local paper. I think it's the Enfield and Tottenham.
Look at it.
Yeah, it's Grace Howarth, the local democracy reporter.
Doesn't mean it's right.
Okay. Anyway, that's where I got the information from. And it's also in Haringey, I understand it's Haringey Community Online, the post online. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to throw...
Can I ask a question, actually?
Yeah.
If you want to check up on things like that, what's the easiest way to do it?
All our budgets are public.
Yeah, excuse me.
Sorry.
What's your name?
Jane.
Oh, Jane. Jane at the back has said if she wants to check up on these figures, what's the easiest way to do it?
I know the answer to this question, by the way.
Yes. Okay.
It's a 3-year settlement, so over 3 years.
Okay.
The government has changed the rules. Under the Tories, they did annual settlements, which meant government, you could never plan in local government because they did an annual settlement and it destabilised. This government have now brought in a 3-year settlement. So that figure that you've said is over 3 years.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm now going to sort of open the meeting to the floor, and people can now free to ask questions. I've got some questions up here, and there's some people on the floor and in the room who want to ask questions. So if you could put your hand up, I will start off, I think, with Terry, and then Sylvia and Sarah.
Sarah.
There's Sarah and Sarah. You both spell your name the same, so that's why I get confused. Okay. Could you just drop one of your questions, because Terry's given 5 questions.
No. I want to. It's a question I want to ask Zena, actually, which is about the 13,000 new homes. Where have they been built?
1,300.
1,300. Where have they been built?
Mainly in Tottenham.
Tottenham Hale is where they've mainly been built. And Tottenham Hale does not have a library.
Do you want me to?
No, take it. I mean, I think the question that Jane asked was a really important one. How do we find out where the houses have been, the 1,300 houses have been built?
I'm assuming that you could find that out by looking on our website and seeing housing, and it should, if it doesn't list them, then I could ask that it is. But there have been 200 and odd homes built on Parkview Road. Fantastic wingspan, just by Down Lane Park. We've got new homes on Hale Wharf, which we did buy, that's true, and we bought some blocks behind Down Lane Park. But we have got 1,300 council homes. There are new homes just being finished in Muswell Hill, not far from Viv and Mark, on Muswell Hill Road, where the old Cranwood children's elderly people's home was. We've opened the block on West Green Road. There are flats being built on Curswell Road. We have about 2,000 odd in some form of development. But you're saying, your point is there isn't a library on Tottenham Hale.
There isn't a library at Tottenham Hale.
No, that is true, there isn't.
No. So if I'm asking that, because I'm a co-chair of 4, I don't understand. It's kind of a radical place to start, but why, when you were considering those 1,300 new homes, I don't know how many are in Tottenham Hale. I think quite a lot of them are in Tottenham Hale. But why was not there consideration of having a library?
The development in Tottenham Hale goes back donkey's years, when people like me weren't in any form of control to even push that. It was made under a complete different administration. I get the point. I'm not saying I disagree with you, and perhaps there's possibility for doing something, and it's worth raising through 4. I think that's a good idea to try and do that. Is it possible? I don't know. Could we give it a try? Yes.
Thank you.
One water.
Take that water off the desk. Okay, lady in the blue, could you speak up?
Yeah.
We all going to answer these questions.
Shall I try and? No, it's
Oh,
okay.
sorry, yes.
Thank you. It's quite impressive, isn't it? 1,300 homes that the Labour Council has built recently. Since the turn of the century, between, say, the last 25 years ago, they've only built 25 homes. As Zena said, there's a block on Muswell Hill Road. It's quite a big block. I think it's got 40, 50 houses, flats in it. But its statistics are interesting. You look over 2 or 3 years, 1,300 homes sounds a lot. You look over 25 years, and it's not very many at all.
I'd remind you about austerity.
I just want to come back on the housing question. It's great the council's taken the decision that it's taken to build council homes. That obviously in the long run is going to save a great deal of money. The financial situation with the council is quite complex. Yeah. Now, the whole thing around housing, local authorities haven't been, as Viv knows, local authorities really have been curtailed from building housing for decades. We've had council houses sold. Many of you will be informed in terms of the housing crisis. An anecdote that I often share: I went to school in Wembley, working class school, 70s and 80s. Yeah, we had a school reunion 10 years ago. I was about 30 odd people in the room. I was one of 4 who went to university, if you could call the Polytechnic of North London University, great polytechnic and university as it is now. Everybody in the room had owned their own home. You're talking about a room full of plumbers, hairdressers, working class people from different ethnic groups in West London, right, where I grew up in Wembley, right, but everybody owned their own home. If you go down the generations, I can tell you, even 10 years younger, I'm 60 this age, right, that number diminishes. You then go to some of the younger people in the room, they will not know in their 30s. They won't be homeowners, many of them, and many of them may not even know homeowners in their age group in London. And I think this is a huge generational driver of inequality. Yeah. and something that needs to be addressed at the national level. And the only way to do it is to get government at all levels involved in building houses. The Labour government made a commitment to build, I think it was 1.5 million homes over the term of this government. The Financial Times 3 weeks ago announced in London that in London we'd missed the new home start target by 94%. You know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know when you live in somewhere like Tottenham, or Wembley, where I grew up, which is one of the most overdeveloped spaces in London, that basically developers are not going to build social housing. And basically they've not got a great incentive to build a lot of housing because actually scarcity increases their profit margins. That's a huge issue. I want to come back to Zena on the financial situation. I agree with most of the points that she said in terms of investments that the council has made. But across London, London councils have experienced a 68% increase in temporary accommodation costs. Yeah? Huge issue, huge driver of the financial situation that Haringey finds itself in. Right? I've also got some pointers around some of the contributors in terms of why things are so bad within Haringey, that we're one of the 7 authorities that are taking out this special money, this special grant, and it isn't a grant, it was described as a payday loan from our chief financial officer. You know? But the rising costs of temporary accommodation, the cost that we've seen rise in terms of residential care, a lot of that going to private equity-owned companies who control that market. Yeah, I'm afraid the chickens are coming home to roost for years and years of policy that are now impacting on the council. And to dismiss the idea that a section 114 is just something over there in the distance, I don't think that's the thing that we need to do. But I think the key thing for me is that the solution is with government. Some of that borrowing that we've taken on, if that can be restructured, and they've done that for local authorities, but classically with local authorities who've gone into section 114, that's when they've done that agreement. The Greens would be pushing for us to get a debt restructure now with the current government. Thank you.
Can I come back? I forgot to say, when I said that 80% of our budget goes on children's social care and adult social care, that the third part that it goes on is temporary accommodation, which is precisely why we put, and when Mark was in the Labour administration, he agreed with this because it was our policy to put housing at the heart of our programme, and that has continued since 2018 through to 2026. And we are the second biggest, I think, council house building programme in the country, not just London, but the country. And Haringey, the properties we are building are spectacularly lovely, and they are to the highest environmental standards. And I would hope there wouldn't be a person in this room that would think that wasn't a good investment. Every child who ends up, every family who gets out of temporary accommodation and ends up living in a stable home has a better quality of life. The biggest determinant of ill health is bad housing, and that is why in the great Labour government of 1945, and Aaron Bevan was Minister for Health and Housing, and that is our great achievement. And we're a London borough, we're a small London borough. We're building as quickly as we can. We are pledging in our manifesto another 5,000 council homes at council rent that people can afford. We have also bought, through our Community Benefit Society, which is a sort of wholly owned council company, it's like a friendly society used to be called, over 700 street properties where families are now living. And we're doing that, and they have stable homes. And I can tell you, if you want our children to do well, if you want families to stay here, if we want communities to thrive, people need homes. And the best thing we can do, and I agree with Mark on this, we've got to reduce the temporary housing budget. We need to house our families. We have to prevent homelessness. And the government is putting 39 billion into house building in the budget. He's right, it is national government. That's what we need to do, and work with national government. And this government has, all right, it's slow, it's made errors and all the rest of it, but we have put those 39 billion in the government's budget for council house building. It is not a mean feat to have built those council houses, Viv. We've overcome years of appalling cuts in public services. We have to rebuild this whole country. Got to rebuild the infrastructure. And if any of you have ever lived, I have been homeless, and I can tell you it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. And when I got my little flat on Shelbourne Road in 1981, when I came back to England, living abroad, brought my daughter and I had nothing, it started again. Getting that flat meant I could start again. It can happen to anybody, anyone. And we have to be grateful and proud that we are doing the housing. It is the centre of our programme. We've got the Outstanding for Children's, and yes, you're right about the private equity. The government is legislating against private equity in the children's residential sector. They're capping it. There are issues coming up in the Education Children's White Paper. I don't expect you to follow this like me. I'm a geek, a nerd, but I can tell you the government is taking on the private equity market. As soon as we can, it couldn't happen sooner. It's an absolute disgrace that our residential settings are being run in that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to come back on something that Zena said about Liberal Democrats and the coalition and that sort of thing. It is impressive, 1,300 houses built in the last period, and I'm not taking that away from you, Zena, or from the Labour Party. But you have to remember, this is a Labour Party that's been in charge here since 1971. We've got a Labour mayor the last 10 or so years, I can't remember exactly how long he's been in. And for the last nearly 2 years, we've got a Labour government. So everything that goes on in Haringey, whether it's good or bad, and I would say house building over the last 25 years is not very good, is down to Labour.
Thank you. Okay, lady in the blue top.
Yeah, I'm Sylvia, I'm the Tottenham Centre resident.
Yeah, could you speak up, please?
Yeah, okay. What I'd like to say is that... Okay, cheers, thank you. What I'd like to say is that, do you think that Marcus Garvey Library is a suitable place for a homeless unit? And do you not think it is a safeguarding issue? It does concern me, safeguarding. I'm a school governor, but my granddaughter used to come here when she was studying for her GCSEs and her A-levels. She was staying with us, and she'd sometimes say, oh, you know, I'm going to go down to the library, Nanny, and use the study area. And I was quite happy for her to do that. She's actually a primary school teacher in Haringey now, but unfortunately she's going abroad to work in the summer because this country does not provide homes for young people anymore, key workers, and it's really depressing because she's an outstanding teacher and she's going to be lost to another country. But I am concerned about the location here of the homeless unit. It really worries me, and it's about the number of children that use this library. They come unaccompanied to this library, and we've got a study area, and it's a major concern. So I'd like to hear what candidates think. Right, thank you.
Thank you for that. I'd just like to add that the planned Homeless Prevention Unit is the plan is for it to be in this room. The Friends of Marcus Garvey Library, when we heard about it, we had a meeting with officers, and basically we asked them if they could consider any other locations within the borough. For instance, a town hall or a recovery centre in Wood Green. And still they want to go ahead and have it here. Now the concern is the mixed use of space, basically. First of all, it's going to be right opposite the quiet study area, but also I have worked in another life. I worked for 10 years with the single homeless, basically, working for them and trying to get accommodation for them. So I know that single homeless people face very serious issues. And I also know that not all single homeless people have mental health issues, or not all single homeless people have drug issues. But I do think that bearing in mind the different types of problems and issues they face, that the library might not be a good place to put that prevention unit for single people. So could you, candidates, could you speak to...
Chair, may I add that there is an unused, abandoned fire service building about 3 yards from the town hall. And it's not being used. It's a large empty building.
Are you talking about the fire station?
The fire station. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not owned by the council.
Yeah, it's not owned by the council apparently, but you know they could rent it out or lease it.
Take it over.
I started. Yeah, start with him. Oh no, start with you. Maybe we start with a different person each time.
I totally agree. I raised this in my opening address. It is concerning, and it's the mixed-use aspect I think that's concerning. But what's also concerning for me as well is in terms of history, trust, consultation, engagement. From what I've heard, that has been lacking in this process. Look, elections are always a good time, sort of post-election, to look at decisions, go back to decisions, and I hope that will happen in terms of this decision, because I do think it needs to be looked at. Thank you.
I think it's really depressing that people think that some family who are homeless are a safeguard. I think it's quite depressing to think that you think if a person's homeless that they're a safeguarding risk.
Yeah.
I've spoken to the Cabinet Member for Housing who tells me that these will be by appointment, that there will be measures in place to ensure the safety and so on. I will take back your concerns, but it does upset me to think that we would think a homeless family is somehow a safeguarding risk, or a homeless person. This is not for rough sleepers or people in the end. It is for people who need support. It's going to be fully staffed, and I would imagine, just like we have at Wood Green, that there would be a security guard and so on. So I really feel quite upset that this juxtaposition is being made. Especially, I recall my own feelings when I went to council in 1981, when I needed somewhere to live. I wasn't a threat to anybody, I just needed somewhere to live. And we can't turn the clock back. We can't undo what's happened that none of us here was responsible for the carve up of Marcus Garvey in 2015, Jasmine. We can't turn that clock back. We have to be able to use the space. We need somewhere dignified for people who are in need, that they can sit and get support. I would hope that it would be well managed and well monitored. If there are any issues, I have no doubt at all it will be immediately reviewed, and I would ask that it's monitored. But I do feel you should ask yourselves, do you really think that a family is a safeguard? You know, what is going on here in that juxtaposition? And you should ask yourselves that as candidates as well. And I will follow that up. I am absolutely just very upset about this question, and I will make sure we have a full response to you. But that's my very emotional and personal response. And I would hope that we can make it work here, because we can't have people queuing round the corner in Wood Green, in the street. We cannot do that to families.
I'm sorry, Zena, this is nothing about families.
Well, it
this
is
a genuine safeguarding concern. I've passed Mulberry Junction only a week ago, and there were 8 men stood outside all smoking. It is safeguarding, Zena. It's a mixed space.
No. Mulberry Junction, may I have the...
No, I'm sorry.
Mike back. I need to respond to you on that. Mulberry Junction is a completely different thing. This is for men and women, but mainly men, who are already homeless and rough sleepers. This is not a service about rough sleeping. It is completely different, to my understanding. Now, it's not my area of day-to-day cabinet activity, because I'm doing the children's services. I do know a thing or two about safeguarding. And obviously, I will make sure that the measures are in place. But I'm asking you to look inside yourself, to think about how you what you think is going on, that would be the first thing you would think of, because we're trying to repurpose the customer service centre and so on. And I think you should ask yourself that question.
It's really upsetting and it's quite disgraceful, because I mentor young people, and if anybody cares about safeguarding, I actually care about safeguarding. And I wrote a letter to Keir Starmer, Bridget Phillipson and the Children's Commissioner, and the head teacher at Parkview had a copy, and it was all about the use of private equity firms running SEND services, children's homes. So nobody need tell me about safeguarding. It's always been my number one concern, children and young people.
Okay, we'll hear from the candidate. I know some other people got their hands up, but I know Sarah's next, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you. As far as I'm aware, it's a government directive that we have to have this space. The nature of Haringey as a borough, geographically, is there's probably more need for it in the east of the borough than in the west. We talked about the parlous situation of finances, so the council has to look for somewhere that's not going to cost a huge amount of money. Not that I know the area well over here, but it seems Marcus Garvey would be the obvious place. I think that's all I want to say. Actually, I think the council's in between a rock and a hard place here. It has to provide this service, and Marcus Garvey seems like the obvious place.
Why?
Well, because if they, I mean, I take the view that the chappie over there said about the fire station. I mean, it's got to go somewhere. We've got to have it. Government says we've got to have it. It's got to go somewhere.
Why the library?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not
Zena,
on the council. I'm not a councillor, so I don't know the answer to that question.
You hear so much about it. Why the library?
I think I agree with Viv actually on this. We are where we are. This is equipped to provide that service. You have doors that can close. It can be discreet. I don't know how it's going to be managed on the day-to-day basis, but why not here? What are you frightened of?
Why not?
What are you
That's
frightened
what I
of?
would like to talk about. That's what I would like to talk about.
Okay, right, the next person, you got a question?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Should we give that one to Sarah?
Well, my head's spinning. First of all, I've just realised that it's the housing needs assessment, and it used to be in Apex House, which is now buildings, private developers, Granger. They've taken that. We've lost our public service space, and they've got luxury flats. Why not here? It's not only the library that's being affected, it's the leisure centre. Half of the function room in the leisure centre will be devoted to the housing needs assessment service. The leisure centre for recreation, for physical exercise, is going to be offices with no windows, dark space. The things that used to be in the leisure centre, exercise of all sorts, yoga, hula hoops, dance, church meetings, can no longer be there. The church meetings will now be in the other studios, meaning that no other physical exercise groups will have large studio space on the weekends at all. The two other big studios will be taken over by the church, who pay. So all the people who go there for the free things on the weekend, the families, the women, the old people, everybody, they won't have any of that on the weekends. And a beautiful room with facilities for making tea and coffee, sitting down, mirrors, beautiful floor. The purpose for which it was designed, it won't be used for that anymore, because half of it will be taken up by the housing needs. I want to know how much effort went into finding another place. I can see why you think this is a good space for the housing needs, but how much effort went into finding other space, and is it too late? And can, you know, the library is suffering, continuing to suffer since it did in 2015 with loss of space and facilities. The leisure centre is about to really take a big hit. How much effort went in? What about getting, you know, it's Granger who are profiting from taking over the space that used to be for our public services. The council just seems to give to the private developers, to Spurs. They're making money out of our area and taking away from us without giving anything back. And I want to know what can be done about that.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Stop.
Well, I don't know. Everything that you mentioned there, I haven't really got any in-depth knowledge about, coming from the other side of the borough. So I go back to what I've said before. It's a Labour council. Labour councils make these decisions, and to do a bit of electioneering, now's your chance for something new.
I totally agree in terms of the relationship in the borough. And this is about history. And actually, in the west of the borough, if you walk past Hornsey Town Hall and the promises that were made there in terms of access to that space, which had been reneged on by the developer, the kind of giveaway price that we gave that asset away. I think assets and how the council uses its assets are quite crucial. And this links to the financial situation, I'm afraid, and I'm kind of being realistic about the financial situation, because part of the payday loan arrangement, which the Chief Financial Officer described it as on a call with councillors, is that the government may be twisting our arm to sell assets. Now, for those of you who have that knowledge of recent history at Haringey, we had an administration here, Labour administration, Viv, yes, in between 2010 and 2018. That was their policy. They gave away a lot of assets. The town hall, and of course they had this big scheme which would have turbocharged gentrification across the borough, which I think a few people in the room I could remember from that campaign, and Councillor Brabazon was involved in that campaign. Well, I think we all made a contribution, Councillor Brabazon.
You did not lead it.
Okay. Well, that's your opinion, Councillor Brabazon. I think we could all unite and say that actually, for the public authority to hold on to assets, to use those assets for public housing, is a way forward that we would agree on. The problem is with the council's financial position is that we could be forced to sell those assets, and that's a real danger. On the specifics, I don't know the details in terms of what's gone on around this decision to place the homeless persons service here, but I think kind of revisiting decisions isn't a bad thing. Quite often we have consultations, we don't have great responses to consultations as a local authority. So I don't think that's a bad thing. Let's have a revisit after the election, whoever's in charge. I mean, certainly I'll be pressing for that, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected on May the 7th.
My understanding is that is not the case about Tottenham Green Leisure Centre, so perhaps you could give me some more detail afterwards.
I spoke to the manager on Thursday.
I'll follow that up, but that's my understanding. But I go back to the key point. We have to provide the services. We haven't got resources, and Tottenham, as Viv has said, most of the people who are homeless are likely to be in Tottenham. I'm afraid we have to use our resources as best we can. We need to put in the safeguards to make sure that it's all right. And I really think, rather than to say, why can't it be here, we have to say we're going to try and make that work for families who need support and need guidance and would be well staffed and so on. Homelessness prevention is a huge issue in this borough, as it is everywhere. We should not be seeing people tramping around with suitcases and all the rest of it. In relation to public assets, you will remember the HDV, and actually I was very instrumental in making sure that it didn't happen, not alone, but we did build a great campaign, and I was very much at the forefront of that, so I don't need to be told by anybody that we shouldn't sell off council assets, and we are not selling them off. We've opened a new youth club in Wood Green, unheard of in the last 4 years that a council opens a youth club, but we have, and we're keeping it open, Rising Green on Leamington Avenue, which works in partnership with Wood Green Library. We haven't closed our libraries. I mean, I'm telling you, Enfield has closed 7 libraries. 7. Lewisham closed 8. Greenwich has closed libraries. Even Tory boroughs like Bromley. Bromley has closed 2. Havering has closed libraries all over the country. So we're not doing that. We've insourced our assets. Fusion was a disaster, and we've insourced it. Hopefully things are much improved. We've invested a lot of money in the leisure centres. And if I might use the opportunity, because of the local plan, I've read the thing, the local plan. I'm a bit more, I'm not cavalier and I'm not complacent, and I'm very pleased that you've raised it. However, before this local plan goes anywhere, there has to be a public inquiry, and so it won't even be agreed with the planning inspectorate for probably another 2 years, I imagine, something like that. There are all sorts of caveats in there about protecting the library and so on and so forth. We're investing money in the leisure centre, I think, in new gym equipment and so on. There's more money going into the leisure centre for more gym equipment, more modern equipment and so on. The pool has had a makeover. So my feeling is, yes, have it on your radar, but nothing of that is a done deal. Nothing at all. Nothing. And we're carrying on investing, keeping going, and if anything even were to happen, it's a extremely long way off. That's my experience of local plans. So yes, you can keep a watching brief, but it's not today's big issue. I really want to emphasise that. Our big issue is making sure we have our libraries as good as they can be. The better it is, the safer they are.
Okay, the lady with the hat, and then Mary.
I'm a bit surprised that
Could you speak up?
I'm a bit surprised that no one's interested in safeguarding the customer service centre. Personally, if this goes, we'd have a Wood Green Library, a bit of Wood Green Library.
It's gone.
It's still open. No,
It's already gone.
They haven't changed. They haven't changed notices. The last time I looked,
is it going to be replaced by somewhere else? Sorry. No. Well, Wood Green Library isn't really accessible for me. The customer services centre, is it not occurred to anybody that we can't all do everything online, for one thing. You can't get through to things on the phone, and you have to be in person anyway for a lot of things. There's nowhere to sit, and it's also taking space away from the library, so it's like, why is this not a consideration at all? What's going to happen to the people that need this place?
Right. Okay. For the candidates.
Can I just say, I've just had a clarification about the leisure centre.
Okay.
Can I just clarify about the leisure centre? I've just had a quick clarification on the position with the leisure centre. This is what I've got, because as I said, not my complete brief. There's a slice of the Jubilee room is being converted. The rest of this conversion is being turned into a hit gym, whatever that is.
Half of it's going to be a gym and half of it's going to be offices.
Right.
It's not the
so
Jubilee
it's not
room.
the whole thing. It's a bit
No,
less
I know,
than,
but
less than perhaps represented. And there's going to be some citizen advice coming in, which is a good thing. CAB, excellent.
it still means that all the things that were in that room are going into the other spaces. The paying things go into the other spaces, and the other spaces are not available to us anymore. If it was all for the gym, at least it would still be a physical activity space, but taking half of it for offices.
But there is going to be a gym, a new gym.
Okay, let me just move on. I just, I'm going to. I just want to say that Sarah runs a hula hoop class, so which I attend as well. So we've experienced how the dramatic change that's occurred because of what's happening, basically. Okay, the lady with the hat, if you could respond to what she said about the fact that this space, it's now closed, basically, and if you want advice, then you have to go up to Wood Green.
Yeah, that's not an answer to my question. Like,
Yeah,
Wood
well,
Green,
that's the...
Wood Green is already it's already failing as a space for a customer service, and that's all we're going to have. What are we supposed to do?
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that. It's if the council is making it more and more difficult for people to walk in off the street and with a problem. I mean, it's a classic. Computer says no if you go online with a problem and you can't get through to the council.
It's about legal services and benefits and housing and all of those things, including homeless people. There's people with luggage in Wood Green Library. Do you know what I mean? And nowhere to sit. And I have some disability, and there's lots of people like worse off than me. Haringey is actually failing in a statutory obligation, not providing customer services space. You have to do some things in person, and a lot of people can't use the internet anyway.
I agree entirely with that. I mean,
there must be a legal obligation, surely, on the. That's what I'm really asking. Is what is the legal obligation on the council to make sure that customer services is accessible?
I can't answer that. I don't know what the legal position is, but just on a practical level, you should be able to walk into an office of your council and speak to someone in person.
I'm asking what the statutory obligation.
I don't know the answer to that.
So if anybody can answer that.
Well, very briefly, from my days as a housing officer, I do know that the council has responsibilities to house people who are described or deemed as being vulnerable, right?
The customer services.
Oh, customer services, I cannot give a response to that.
I think she's not asking about the issues, it's actual access to speak to someone in person she's talking about.
I don't have an answer in terms of the legal position, but clearly we need accessible services, preferably in the two kind of key centres in the borough, in Wood Green and Tottenham. And really my view, which I think has been expressed in this room, it might be different elsewhere, is that this decision in terms of the homeless person service should be reviewed after the election. I think you're referring to customer services. I can't give a view in terms of the legal position on that, but certainly I would think it's going to be desirable for everybody that we have effective services in Wood Green and in Tottenham that are accessible to everybody who needs them.
What I'm talking about is things like people being able to pay a fine. Yeah, apart from anything else, you can actually be in legal trouble if you can't get documents in time, if you can't find out what's going on. You can end up with court costs, say for parking fines and things like that. That all go through the customer service centre. you've got them dealing with the tiny space in Wood Green Library, dealing with people, homeless people. They're already doing that. Homeless people, benefits, housing benefits, council tax, parking, all of those things. This was a much better space for that, much bigger, and with much more seating and more accessible.
Okay.
And more secure.
I'll give you a personal story about that. Close your ears while I say I got a parking ticket the other day. I've got to go to Walthamstow. You have to drive to Walthamstow to pay a parking ticket in Haringey. It's ridiculous.
That's,
If you don't pay it online.
Yeah.
That may be to do with some other stuff to do with, I don't know, the courts anyway had the fines there. You raise a very good point. I think one of the reasons to separate out the homelessness stuff was to give people a more personalised and discreet service, to give people a more discreet and personalised service rather than queuing in Wood Green, and then to make Wood Green better for all the other services, because the homelessness stuff takes more time. That's my speculation. What we want to do is to make sure that people who can't use the digital methods, like use the internet and so on, can go and see people. That's really how it's working, and that's how it's working everywhere. It may not be the best, but with all the financial constraints and everything else, we're trying to target the services to people who need face-to-face and who can't do the basic stuff online, because most transactions now that people do are online. So we have a whole program for outreach to people who can't use the digital, and that is where the customer services come in. So hopefully by Homelessness Prevention coming here and having a dedicated service makes it better at Wood Green. It may not work, in which case Mark is right, it needs to be kept under review.
Wood Green is not suitable. This is a suitable space for kids.
I will take back your comments.
There's no privacy.
I will take back your comments, but there's privacy here for people who are at the most
there's no privacy
needing
at
it.
Wood Green, but you've got to give personal detail with people standing right behind
Okay,
you.
I will take back that comment. I think it's a very useful observation.
Can I just add a very quick thing?
Yeah, wait a minute. So many people got their hands up.
Sorry, it's just one little point.
Okay.
And I totally agree with what the lady says, because if you've got mobility issues, you can't get to Wood Green.
Yeah. Okay. Now, there's a guy at the back with his hand up, and then Mary. Mary, do you still want to add something? Okay, Mary had her hand up first, and so the guy at the back, you'll come after Mary. Oh yes. Okay, Mary, could you?
I have a question about, Jasmine has copied it for us, the Haringey draft local plan about
Sorry,
you need to be really very close. Okay. I've got a question about the Haringey draft local plan. So it says that it includes, so the Friends group is a bit concerned about it because it includes the Marcus Garvey Library and the Leisure Centre in it. And it says, let's see, that first of all there's going to be extensive engagement about it rather than a consultation, so that's one point. Can we have a consultation? And the other thing, it says that there's plans to maybe redevelop the site and maybe reprovision the library and the leisure centre on this site, and also include some housing on this site. Obviously it's great to have some local housing, additional housing, we're all supportive of that, but what does it mean when it says it's going to reprovision the library and the leisure centre? Can they include a sentence saying that there's not going to be any downgrade, there's not going to be replaced by a smaller library and a smaller leisure centre, and can they guarantee that any reprovision will be immediate? And there won't be like a gap of years where there's no library and no leisure centre on the site.
Yeah, here, here.
go first? Yeah. I think I mentioned this in passing before. It's none of this is a fait accompli. It's in a local plan which has got decades, decades to go. That is the experience of every local plan. So I can't answer any of your questions because none of it is real. It's just in a plan which may or may not ever be realised. And you can you can see from me that I'm entirely sceptical about whether it would ever be realised. So I'm not trying to be in any way flippant, but I wouldn't really worry about it right now. As I said, this has to go to a public inquiry. The whole local plan has to go to a public inquiry with the planning inspectorate, and I doubt that is going to happen for a couple of years. So you can ask the questions, and by all means get the planners here and have a meeting with the. I was at a meeting the other week with residents of my ward who were concerned about the local plan, and the officer who is responsible for the plan came and had to defend what was in it and what it means, because he can explain it better than probably a councillor who's got a bigger picture. So I would suggest that you invite the officer who leads on the local plan for a specific meeting to talk about the concerns that you've raised, Mary, which are quite legitimate, but not something that I can give you an answer about, because it's just a plan which may or may not ever happen, and you're right to challenge what will happen in the detail. But he'll probably say, well, it's just a big picture plan, but see what they say. It's, it came up the other week because of arena, and people think it's going to happen tomorrow, but it isn't. None of it is. As I said, before you even get to anything else, you've got to get it agreed in a public inquiry. And people have the right to object, they have the right to go to the public inquiry. I know because I went in the last local plan, sat there for a day or so about other stuff, I can't remember what it was all now. And it all takes a very long time. So I'm not trying to be flippant. I'm really saying, yes, be concerned, ask the questions, but don't angst about it because it isn't happening for a very, very, very long time, even were it to happen.
Still increases people's anxieties.
Well, I hope I've allayed your anxiety a bit.
You've just made it more muddled.
Just going to get a drink.
I think everything that Councillor Brabazon said is actually true, but you also need to be alert and keeping an eye on the issue and challenging the issue in terms of the process, because quite often these are a thin end of the wedge, and clearly in terms of I think you said was it the reallocation of the library service? The reprovision. Clearly you can't have a library and a leisure centre on a building site if that ever came to fruition. It would have to be moved elsewhere, and then you'd have to, in that situation, have to think where else could a temporary service be provided. That looks highly unlikely to me in terms of looking at the landscape in Tottenham. But we're thinking, as Councillor Brabazon said, years ahead, but obviously you need to be alert, you need to be challenging this, asking those questions, bringing the officers down, bringing the relevant cabinet members down, and informing other people, because this is the problem, I think, in terms of these processes, that so few people actually know what's going on. So actually spreading that word around in the local community, having discussions around that, I think is absolutely crucial.
I think Bernie Grant will be turning in his grave.
I think this is a clash of national policy, which is to build a load more houses, and local policy or local councils where they've been told by government, look around the whole of Haringey and find some spots where you can build houses. In Moswell Hill we've got car parks are under threat, and the population, the electorate there are very worried that their car parks are going to be built over.
Oh yeah, we'll lose a library library, they lose a car.
Well, you could knock down the Oswald Hill Library. It's not very big.
Lose this car park.
The point I'm making is that the council has to find these spots in the new local plan, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it will happen. As I said, in Muswell Hill, there's huge outcry against it, and there obviously is here as far as Marcus Garvey is concerned.
We have given a lot of spots in Tottenham Hill. I think that's a lot of.
Okay, I'd just like to say, sort of very briefly, that as far as the Friends group is concerned, we want to know why it is in the plan in the first place.
Yeah.
The council has said to us very clearly that they have no plans to demolish the library, which we believe. But the fact that you put it into the plan means that it is the thin edge of the wedge, basically. And that's why you would never, for instance, put the Tottenham Town Hall in the plan or the Civic Centre in the plan, Muswell Hill Library in the plan. You know, why put the library in the plan? To get reassurance from the council, what we basically want is for them to take it out of the plan. There are issues to do with maintaining the building and refurbishing it and making sure it's kept up to date. We all want that. We all recognise that. And it's even been said to us, if it's in the plan, that will be a way of protecting it, even though the issue of protecting it is not actually really taken or dealt with in the plan. So if you really want to reassure us as residents, then simply take it out the plan. The Marcus Garvey Library is going to be there, or need to be there, for the next 100 years. You know, that's how the Victorians built. You know, look at Tottenham Town Hall. It's there. Nobody's sort of rushing around it and thinking, oh, we can redevelop it, we can demolish it, etc., etc. Why the library? There's no reason at all to put the Marcus Garvey Library in the plan if you want it to be here 100 years from now. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, I've got 3 more people. So the guy at the back, and then I'm going to come to you next. You'll be next. Yeah.
Hi, we heard a lot about, I think I'm alright with that.
All right, fine.
We heard a lot about the safeguarding issue about bringing the homeless unit to this building, and obviously we agree that the council needs to service these areas of the community. Everybody deserves to get those services they do. But I think the question was in my opinion, quite right to question, do we want to bring a homeless unit to a library? And I think the point that is that was being overstated there is that we are effectively giving people who we don't want around children a legitimate reason to be here. And I think that's the point, and I think it's a little bit unfair to isolate the point and then make it sound mean-spirited towards homelessness. I think mean-spiritedness towards homeless people would be to bring them to this facility to do what they have to do and not give them the purpose-built facility to do just that. We have sites all around the borough. There's places, we heard about the fire station, there's places down by there used to be Allied Carpets, which we saw burned down during the riots, and now it's a Sports Direct. I'm sure the building behind that is a council facility. If not, I might be wrong, it might be DWP. There is a big DWP building on Broad Lane, which appears to be boarded up and not redeveloped, and that is a huge facility. 2 floors. You could put a facility on there on the ground floor, not here because this is not on the ground floor, and therefore not accessible to anyone in a wheelchair. You need to have a working lift. And we know how expensive and how difficult it is to maintain lifts in public buildings. It's expensive business. So I think that there is a lot there that hasn't been considered, and we the people would like to see those things considered. We'd like to see those big buildings redeveloped if we would. And you could put a little coffee shop in the front and a couple of traders, small people who are, what do you call them? sole traders who then will rent the space, so you're making money, the space is paying for itself, and now it allows you to have something nice where you can spend lots of money putting a Haringey on the wall to service your homeless and your community.
Thank you for that. Right, it's your turn now. You've been very patient. Sorry.
I was just concerned about the provision for children, children's library services, which are vital, as you all know, especially to help the schools and to complement what's done in schools, providing homework facilities, especially in the deprived area. What's going to happen when High Road West scheme goes through and Cllr Library is demolished to be replaced with something at the whim of the developer up there? There's going to be more demand on library services here, as far as I can see.
Thank you.
I don't think I know enough about that situation to give you an answer. So I'll pass on to one of the other two.
Yeah, I'll just say very briefly what I do know about it is that basically the plan is to demolish Cllr Library simply because Tottenham Hotspur want to a path from the station to the football ground. So it's bonkers as far as I'm concerned, but then I'm into libraries. So the council has obviously taken on board this, and they've got the permission to do it. I don't know, my understanding is that the plan is to build what they call a media library, from the few things that I've seen written about it. And my understanding of a media library is generally a library without any librarians. Yeah, so that's all I know. That's very, very little. But I'll just pass it on to the others.
Okay, I don't know enough about the details in terms of Coombs Library to sort of comment in any detail, but obviously in terms of looking at the whole locality of Tottenham, it gives even more stress in terms of protecting services here and developing services here as a critical hub. I could make a lot of comments about the council's relationship with Tottenham Hotspur's Football Club. I won't. I've got kind of views on that from my time within the council. I'll say this, I think it could do with a reset, so let's hope we are in a place where we can have that reset.
I don't think that anything's going to be happening with Cllr for many years, so I don't think that's something to worry about because of what's Lend-Lease. It's public information. They change their priorities and so on. So I think I'm not very close to it because I've got my own portfolio. But fundamentally, I don't think that's that part of it. Anything is happening. I think it's just not happening at the minute. If anything is happening, I don't know about it, and I don't think that where Cllr is in any issue at the moment. So I'll say no more because I would not. I'm not. Au fait with everything, but that's my understanding.
Thank you. Alan, you've been very patient.
Yes,
Do you want it or not?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Speak right close up.
Okay. Is that close enough?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just observing. I'm not here to take a party view. I haven't yet decided how I'm going to vote in this election. I'm leaning towards voting Green, but I have been as a Labour member for a long time and a Labour councillor. And I may end up voting Labour. But anyway, my question is that my observation is that what's happening here is some very interesting questions being posed by some very committed local people, and this format is very unsatisfactory. It's unsatisfactory for various reasons. One is that the three candidates all of them haven't done their homework, and they've turned up at the meeting and not apparently actually made the effort to do it. Now, to be fair to them, they should have known a little bit in advance about what the sort of questions were going to come up, and that would have been more helpful. But I also think that right now we're in a situation in this area where we are having to wait and see. We don't know who's going to be running the council. We don't know which group of councillors are going to be in the majority, who is going to be the leader, all those things. We don't know if there's going to be an alliance of different parties. It's absolutely up in the air. It's the only time every 4 years we get a chance to change things, which is excellent that we should be able to do that. And fresh air comes through the doors and the windows. But I would want to suggest that this group hosts a meeting in just after the election with some more people who actually have been elected, and start making some promises and some undertakings, and that goes down in writing, so that when there is some proposal, and when I heard, I have to confess that Zena is my wife. She and I don't agree about politics these days, on some things, not all of it. We agree on lots. But I think that it's impossible to say what is going to happen the day after the election. But you want to, I would want to have people who have spent time walking around the area before, and not just driving round or having a look through the window, but of a car, but actually finding out. It's a bit shaming that you don't know enough about this area, and you come here and you represent your parties. You let your parties down, it seems to me. But I suggest that having a meeting where people are elected, and then listening to giving them the same questions, similar questions, asking them in advance what you want to know, and getting some firm answers.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean that.
Yeah, just before I pass it to Vic, I did send to the candidates. I did send out something which should mentioned about 4 general areas that might be covered in the meeting. Obviously, I didn't know what all the questions were going to be, but I think they had a general idea. Anyway,
I think, firstly, the nature of local politics is that you're a local councillor for your area. I live in Muswell Hill. I'm standing for council in Fortis Green. I know loads and loads of stuff about what's going on in Alexandra Park Road.
You're Haringey councillor.
Yes, but I'm standing in Fortis Green. So
well,
I
4 years being Haringey.
Yes,
councillor.
I understand what you're saying, but if I was to ask you about the bus lane in Alexandra Park Road or the LTN in Bounds Green, if you don't live in that area, you probably might not know about it. The nature of local politics is the 3 councillors, or sometimes 2 candidates in each ward, are standing and representing the people in their ward. My ward is Fortis Green, that's where I live.
Why aren't you there then?
Because he's covering somebody's ill.
Yeah, thanks for the question and observations, Alan. No, I don't live in Tottenham. I've lived in the borough for about 15 years. I live in Muswell Hill. My wife grew up and lived there. Her parents lived there. We have caring responsibilities with an elderly relative. That's where I'm based. I know the borough, I think, fairly well. I've sent 3 kids to school in the borough. One of whom would do 2 years at Tottenham Sixth Form College. Was effectively excluded the end of year 9, so I know about the SEND process as a parent. I know about the experience of black boys being excluded from school. And in terms of my day job, I work in civil society. I work with a lot of charities who work around the criminal justice system and youth justice. So I think I know a thing or two. I've spent quite a great deal of time over recent weeks walking the streets of Tottenham, knocking on doors, speaking to residents as part of this political campaign. One of the things I didn't get a chance to mention, which I just got cut off when we were doing the opening addresses, is that myself and my two other colleagues, if we are elected, would like to host a regular open meeting here in the library and look at doing that sort of open engagement across other kind of community spaces within the ward. Ultimately, I think the communication between the public and politicians is a key thing. Lots of the discussion has touched on national policy, and national policy is important. And I just want to touch on one area around housing policy. The biggest thing that this government could do could be to have and deliver a progressive housing policy in terms of benefiting both the council and the local community. Housing policy has been a disaster in this country for 40 years, and generationally it's just driving inequality. And on the doorstep, when I'm talking, whether it's to young people in this ward who are in shared accommodation and who are in their 30s, some in their 40s in shared accommodation, something I couldn't even fathom when I left home at 19, having grown up in a working class household, two parents who came here, Windrush generation, just before the first 62 Immigration Act actually. You know, it's incomprehensible that you're going to be in shared housing. And parents who have their kids at home now stretching into their 30s. Yeah? So we have street homelessness, we have all the challenges around temporary accommodation. Housing is key. So this government needs to deliver on its housing promises. I don't think it will, because I think the whole construct in terms of that policy is flawed. And I walk around Tottenham Hale, I walk around Wembley where I grew up, it's all evidence of that. And we need to change that. We need to build, the councils took brave decisions to build more affordable housing. That's contributed to the financial situation. Obviously, interest rates, great thing in 2018 to decide to build more council homes when interest rates were at 0%. Obviously, interest rates have risen. That's increased costs. There are other things that have happened. I don't want to go into a lot of detail in terms of the recent history. But the biggest thing that central government can help us with, and that I think you should pose that question to your MP, is in terms of delivering more affordable housing. That's how government, the biggest way that government can help Haringey kind of move forward over this current period. But crucially, in terms of the Green Party, we want more open engagement with the community. Thank you.
Well, it's fact because I live with Alan. He knows that I was researching for this meeting and have been researching for a couple of days and reading up about the issues with libraries nationally and the general funding position. So I like to think I was prepared for this meeting. I just want to say about the Greens. It's interesting that Mark is talking about progressive housing policy, because you may not know the Greens run Bristol, and in Bristol they're going to be selling off thousands of council homes because they can't make their housing revenue account, which is the housing count that you have within a council budget. So I'm very pleased the Greens are very interested in public housing, but the administration they do run, they're selling them off. So you talked about protecting assets, and perhaps the Greens could learn from their own authority in Bristol what they shouldn't be doing and what we're not doing. I think this has been a really interesting meeting, but I do want to say that in local government, you have to look at a really big picture and how the money is obviously key, how the money works. And there are things which need to happen for local authorities to be able to deliver better. Within that, for example, is to really tackle the problem of adult social care. Every authority in the country is crippled by those costs. We have to pay for all of them because every government has ducked sorting out adult social care. It should be a national responsibility. There should be, in my view, a national care service of some kind linked to the NHS, and I hope that's what Louise Casey is going to recommend in the report that she is fast tracking. The special education, the cost for special needs will be borne very significantly by central government. They're going to pick up 90% of the budgets to spend and overspends for special educational needs, and that's in the white paper, which will relieve a lot of pressure on local government, many of whom are being driven into bankruptcy by the costs of special needs and the way it is currently constructed, not least of which is the enormous amounts of money you have to pay, for example, to private independent providers, and we all agree about the private equity. They're all of us, doesn't matter, liberal. So, you know, we have to look at the big picture, but there have been real improvements. We've had money for our family hubs. I know you wanted to talk about early years and children and so on, and one of the things I am saying to the officers is that I really want there to be stronger relationships with the libraries on the early years provision, so we use the libraries more effectively. So we have the hub on St Anne's Road, we have one down at Park Lane. There's no reason on earth why that is not connected to the libraries, and I've been pushing that. I think I may have to push a bit harder, but I guarantee you that I will.
Okay, thank you. Right, now, right. Okay, you next, followed by Isidoros. Martin? No,
Oh, me?
Martin.
Oh, yeah. It's just a very simple question about the council's own monitoring its own contracts. It's brilliant that the leisure services have been brought in-house. Brilliant that we spent hard cash on some new shiny equipment. I just wonder, from your experience as councillors, how might you better monitor these in-run services than the council has done historically of the services it's outsourced? So we all got lots of complaints about fusion lacking and all the rest of it. And of course the classic answer is, not me, blame the people that run it. But you monitor the service. Now the council has its own services, which I assume it monitors itself. So how can we be reassured that actually that will be a better experience for the people that use the services than was previously the case?
I used to use Park Road swimming pool up until a couple of years ago, and I stopped using it because it was absolutely filthy. Fusion were probably one of the worst operators of leisure services buildings, if you like, anywhere. It's been brought in-house in the last 2 years, I think, and my understanding is that it's going to cost £700,000 a year more than if they got a much better, and I use that word better in inverted commas because I've heard there's a leisure company called Better that is extremely good. One of the things that councils do, and governments do it as well, they say it's too much of a problem having it in-house, so we'll outsource, we'll get a private company to do the work. And then 3, 4, 5, 6 years later, they say, oh, that company's useless, we need to bring it back in again. And then, lo and behold, a few years after that, they say, oh, well, this is costing far too much money, we'll get someone to make a bid for it, and they can run it, outsource again. So my view, and Liberal Democrat view, is that it should be outsourced, but it should be outsourced by a company that knows what it's doing far better than Fusion ever did.
I think that's a real challenge. I think we need management which is much closer to the delivery of services, that shows a great deal more interest. We need political leadership working with the management in terms of making sure particularly that front of house of the services improves. So that's going to be a challenge for our leisure services. And I've seen that improvement, certainly using New River, as I do sometimes. I use Park Road as well. I haven't sort of seen that change as yet, but I know there's work that's just started there in terms of revamping the facilities. But I think that's an ongoing challenge, and I think it's around the communication. I think part of that will help the challenge is this point I made in the previous question, which is around the consultation and the engagement between politicians and the public and the users of those services. But on the private providers question, I am of the view that when you put public services into the hands of the private sector, they're always going to look to make their 20%. And they may start off delivering fantastically, but you'll see an erosion in terms of service quality. That's my view. And the emphasis will always be on profit ahead of the services. And I think the biggest example that we've had of that is water privatisation. I think it's a disgrace that this government has come in and that hasn't been firmly on the table, because that has been an absolute failure on every metrics. And anyone who's watched the Channel 4 recent drama, irrefutable. So I think we've been caught up in this dogma that the private sector is always so much better. I think the culture in the public services has kind of swallowed that, and I just don't think that is the case. And water privatisation, I would say, is the kind of biggest example. It's been a disaster. It's a favourite anecdote of mine. People who know me get bored of hearing it. I go to the Netherlands a lot. My son lives there, so I go there not as a tourist, but to visit my son. As soon as you jump on a train on public transport in Holland, you see the difference in terms of really just consistent, sensible investment decisions in public services. I see it all around the kind of public realm there. So we've got a big challenge around that. Certainly in terms of leisure centres, that's one I think for all of you to have a look at in terms of, I've seen that at New River, the improvements there. I'm hoping to see that in terms of Park Road over the coming months and years.
Well, I don't really believe in privatisation, and we're unfortunately in a position where not everything that we want to be insourced can be, because we've got a legacy of hollowing out public services. That's what's happened, and it's a disgrace what the Tories did. It's a disgrace what the coalition did when they outsourced everything that moved. And you know, as they said about Margaret Thatcher, price of everything, the value of nothing. And I think that monitoring contracts is hugely important. I'm really pleased that this council has taken a much firmer line on monitoring of contracts, and I think that will continue. If we win the election, I know that governance is going to be a huge issue. I know that because I've raised it. I know it's hugely important in every area, and how you keep control. The one area where I think we have done really well, we couldn't possibly have insourced the bins because we haven't got the money to do it. Just could not do it. But we have managed the Veolia contract really well. And I think most people would say it's been pretty good. And we have to learn of strong contract management, I think, is crucial. I think that insourcing the leisure centres was long overdue, and I'm really proud we did it. And I think they are better than they were. Fusion were terrible, absolutely no doubt about that. We insourced, let me tell you a little something that you won't know we did. We insourced, does anybody know what alternative provision is? Alternative provision is the provision that is given to young people who are excluded from school for whatever reason. So their behaviour or their anxiety or whatever. And everywhere in the country they would be called sin bins. And Haringey, it was privatised years ago to a private company, which then went bust, and it was shocking. The provision was absolutely shocking. We insourced that. We have built that up to what is now called Haringey Learning Partnership. We have the best alternative provision in the country. It was given not just an outstanding inspection by Ofsted, but an outstanding. And the inspector told me there is nothing I can find to say basically it's magnificent. And it is. And we don't have exclusions. We haven't had any exclusions anymore. We have a provision which is so good. It accommodates young people and run in-house by the council. That is the model. That is what we need to do. That's how we need to hold on. And we know, I agree with you about infrastructure, I agree with you about the Netherlands, Scandinavia, everywhere. Of course we should be like that. And I hope by the end of this Labour administration, things will have turned a corner.
I meant the government.
Okay. Isidoros comes next, and Jeremy after that.
Okay. You don't look this side.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. Isidoros, and then Frank, and then Jeremy.
Did you want to go first? Yes, come.
Well, first of all, I think most of you probably know me, but I am a city councillor here, but I was retiring after 32 years as a councillor, okay? And please trust me that I don't have a party political line on this particular.
Well, the microphone closer to your mouth.
Closer.
Yeah, all right. I don't have a political line, a party political line. I think those who know me will know that I probably I'm against. Yeah, I'm probably against my own party. But anyway, that's another story. Now there are two issues that concern me in the discussion here, and I want to ask for clarification from the candidates about them. The first is as in relation to the move of the homeless service here, and the implication mentioned, or the possible link with people feeling that it is an undesirable service, that kind of thing. And that's the reason rather than other reasons. The reason, the basic reason we should be concerned about, and I want to ask the candidates about that, is why here? Others asked that thing. There are alternatives. Have they been explored? Somebody asked, somebody has mentioned a few alternatives. And I can tell you that this is the key issue. Why should you move it in a place where it's not compatible with the other services in general, and competes with them for space or other reasons? If you think that is too long of a thing, let me give you an example where it can be done. Why can't we put it in somebody else's offices? Let me take a good example. The leader of the council had a perfectly good, recently redeveloped, reconditioned office in Georgian House with all the things. Didn't like it, we got into Alexandra House. Yeah, it cost money to we redid it. Alexandra House, for example, would be a far better place for the service that we're talking about. Straight away, we've got space there, and it could be. So the first question is, are you going to commit that you will actually review the decision to bring it here straight away, since the decision has been made but hasn't been implemented yet, or it's just been implemented? Are you absolutely clear that you'll fight it and check and find out whether there are alternatives for that better location? The second issue, just quick now, is the reference in the new plan on introducing a possible future proposal to demolish these buildings and build 200 flats and a reprovision for the whole thing, etc. Yeah? I think the problems with that are, let's be absolutely clear. All right, we have assurances that the current administration, as it stands at this moment, doesn't have any plans to demolish the area. But, first of all, having it then in an official plan as a potential proposal makes it much more difficult to defend it in the future. Future administrations might change, especially on the planning thing. If the planning committee then turns it down, it will be impossible to appeal against it, because it is already on your official plan. Just one thing. So that is one of this. The second issue that is problematic about it is a blight. And next year, 3 years' time, I need to invest, either to change something here, etc. I would say, but no, but it's possible that we might demolish it in 5 years' time, or 10 years' time, because it's in our plan. You know, that kind of thing. And that might be a blight. So, The issue is that it doesn't help anybody, especially if the current administration doesn't have any intention of demolishing the thing. There's no reason whatsoever to put it in the plan and to exist. So will you commit, all of you, absolutely, that we'll do everything possible to remove it from everything. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Let me just say, Vic has to leave soon, so if you, the responses have to be, the question has to be quite short, but yeah. So Vic, for Frank and then Jeremy.
Yeah, when the library was first set up, right? One of the things was to make it a centre of excellence for black studies within the UK. It's the same as this commitment I'm asking for. Could you commit that you will assist the Friends of Marcus Garvey Library into making this a centre for black excellence studies? And before you commit, do you know what it would entail to make this a centre of black studies? Okay.
No, if you could, we'll answer that. If you could answer that first, then we'll come to Jeremy.
I think we've had a long discussion about the, in inverted commas, the future of Marcus Garvey Library. And I certainly can, if the Liberal Democrats were in a position of power in Haringey, we would certainly review both of the things you said, Isidoros. As far as a centre for black excellence, I'm afraid I'm going to have to say the same answer as I said before. I don't know enough about it to commit the Liberal Democrats to make sure there's that sort of centre in this library. But I'll certainly take it back to the leader of the Liberal Democrats on the council and say this was the last question answered, or asked rather, in the meeting.
Talking about the making it a centre of excellence of black studies, I think that's absolutely spot on. Should be, and it's in your development plan. And I'll certainly be pursuing that with my colleagues who leads on borough culture and so on. I don't see how there would be any resistance to any of that, and have to work with the Friends of Marcus Garvey, Bruce Castle Museum, to make that happen and get the collection that I think is still in Wood Green in the Caribbean Centre, hopefully could be relocated. So the answer is yes.
Well, why was it removed by the Labour?
I don't know. Well, but I can't I can't answer that. I think there was some other thing going on that I'm not party to. So I can't turn that clock back. We only look forward to make something happen. Well, I'm not going to convince you of commitment. So there we are. I'll do my best.
I'm astounded how a Labour.
No, you won't. Chair, am I getting answers to my questions?
Oh, I'll come back. Sorry. Sorry. No, I think the point you make about the local plan is well made, Isidoros, and we should see if it can be reviewed. Hopefully it's not too late. I understand it's about blight, I get that, but at least it means, you know, it is what it is at the minute, and the thing isn't saying that it isn't going to be anything else, really. There would be a library, but I'm not defending it. I'm just saying I think the point you make is well made, and I understand it. So yes,
so you will try to remove it.
Regarding your points about the office space, I'm assuming you did raise all that because you're the ward councillor. So I would hope you brought all that up with Sarah when you knew this was all going to happen. But as my understanding is that it was thought about, and this seemed to be a good space because it's quite discreet and for the reasons I laid out before.
On the centre, yes, but I think it's quite crucial, as I said in the opening address around whoever the administration is post May the 7th. They kind of bring together the Friends group with senior officers, and we go through that development plan, because I know that's in the development plan. And in terms of the actual, what that actually all entails, yeah, I don't know all the details in terms of where the different bits of the collections are elsewhere around the borough, but in terms of that sort of process, and we can then map out a way to kind of put that together, kind of pathway forward for that. With regards to Isidoros' questions, I think I've answered them, Izzy. I mean, you know, I think there needs to be a post-election review of the decision. I don't think that's kind of taking a side either way, but I think it needs to be looked at sort of post the election. That's nothing new. That often happens in terms of post-election. And on the plan, yes, I do agree with you. So if there's any way of kind of pushing it, making sure that isn't within the final plan, that would be my position. And for me, it's not just about the issue of blight. I've spoken about where I grew up in London, Wembley, one of the most overdeveloped places in London. Tottenham Hale as well, I think has been overdeveloped. But it comes back to this national issue around housing policy. How much of these flats that are coming up are affordable? How many are owned by people in the local area? You know, how many are investments, not just to buy-to-let landlords, but also foreign investors? All of this needs to be opened up, and the Labour Party nationally needs to do a hell of a lot more, because it isn't going to deliver its 1.5 million homes target. That's been abundantly clear, and I mentioned the FT, 94% target missed in terms of new starts in London.
Okay, so I mean we're coming to an end now, so we've got, I think, one more question from Jeremy. Right, is there anybody else who wants to say anything? Right. Well, you've asked the question already, so.
Fine, and I'm sending an email anyway to Tottenham Hospital. I'm going to do it now.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, to do with monitoring of the services, the Friends of Marcus Garvey Library were one of the groups that applied to Haringey Council to get freedom of information, made freedom of information requests in order to get Fusion out of the building, basically. So we understand other people did that, other groups, but I just want to mention that. Okay, Jeremy, could you?
Well, yeah, I was just wondering if we just have a vision from each candidate, for you and your party, for what you see this building, the library, being in 5-10 years' time. So a bit more kind of, what do you see as this place?
Yeah. Well, I think I would like to see it used.
Louder, please.
I would like to see all sorts of activities going on here, because I think libraries are spaces that aren't just about borrowing books. I know that's the heart of it and so on, but we have to face the fact of how people relate to culture and so on and so forth. I would love to see it being used all the time by school groups, children's, under fives, families, health. I don't see why we couldn't have health things in here, projects for older people. I agree about the drinks machine, by the way. I would like to see a much closer relationship with the sports centre. In particular, in the holidays, I've long had this idea about the £1 swim, when the kids go for a swim for £1 at the leisure centre, which is something we introduced and which I think is really, really a good thing in the holidays, that the library and the sports leisure centre work together, for example, to create an activity for young people so they can leave the leisure centre, go into the library, have a cake, have a sandwich, and do ball games, chess, whatever you want to do, really. I think it's being used, things like library lates. I'd like to see much more of that, much more cultural activity in the spaces, so that we bring more music and cultural experiences to people, which I've seen work here and did work quite well. I agree you should have the Black Centre of Excellence and Literature and so on. In summary, I think it has to be used all the time for lots of different activities, and for that we need a staff team that are creative, are given the authority to be creative so they can get on with it and doing all the different things that would meet the needs of very many different groups. I don't see the library acting on its own. I think it is needs to be much more related, interrelated to all sorts of other things that are going on. So it's used in a much more lateral and creative way. Whether that answers your question, I don't know.
How far away is it at the moment from your vision?
Well, I think some of it is in your development plan, and having read the library strategy, I think the library strategy might be written a bit sort of low government-ish, but I think it is pushing for that type of a vision.
So
I think
at the moment it's not that though.
well, it's a strategy. We have to develop it, and it's a strategy from now to 2030. So hopefully by 2030 we'll get there. We've got the Borough of Culture, which is a huge springboard, gives us a huge impetus to do that. So, you know, but I think you have to work with...
This would be a great space for...
And all of you have to work with... You have to also work with us, and there has to be a trusting relationship, which I hope, if it isn't there, is coming there, and that we work together.
We need space.
Okay. Did you want to, just very short, if you could make it a minute, and then I just take just Jason's and Mary.
There's nothing that I disagree with in terms of what Councillor Brabazon has outlined. The development plan's got lots of really good things in there, and what we need to do, I think, is make the staff feel empowered as well. That has to be part of it. You know, this is an opportunity, a chance for them to develop personally, professionally, but also in terms of contributing to the community. And I think there's some good members of staff. I've known some of them on the desk for years, who I've seen in this library and other libraries. So I think that's absolutely key. Two, just very quick additional points. One, I think younger people need to find out what younger people need, what their needs are, what would inspire them to come in, through the doors more. And then the second point I'd raise is the relationship with civil society. I work in civil society in terms of making my living in the charity sector. I know people well in the voluntary sector in Haringey. The feedback I get from them in terms of relationships with the council is that we need to improve things, and I think libraries are a kind of, as I said, a community hub with that model. Kind of engaging with them, getting to do kind of joint partnerships with them, I think is really crucial.
I think I agree with both of what's been said just now, but I'd like to widen the question a bit. If you want a good library, you have to use it. It's the same as a pub. If you don't want pubs to close, you have to use them. It's police stations. If you don't want police stations to close, you have to make sure that the police are available. Police are available, not on the street walking around, but in the police station where you can go if you have a problem. I think society is moving to an internet society. We're all sitting at home on our computers, and then we wonder why libraries close. So I think you have to widen it, and if you want something to be good in the future, as my two colleagues have said, they're aspirations, but you've got to use the libraries.
This library is really busy all the time. It's packed.
Okay, very, very quickly, Jason and Lucy, you want to say something?
During the past year, library services have faced serious cuts.
I want to hear you.
I'm really sorry, everybody, but I've got another meeting at 5:30, so of course I've got to make a move. But thank you very much for, not that I was invited. I was very much a stand-in for...
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Is that your code? Don't forget your code.
Don't forget your code.
Bye, you two.
During the past year, can you hear me?
Yes.
During the past year, library services have faced serious cuts. That's in opening times and staffing, etc. What I want to know, well, one person's left, is will there be an assurance in future that there will be no more cuts to services, staffing, etc.?
Yes, we've had cuts in hours.
Hours, yeah?
Was there another question?
Yeah.
Hi, so many questions, so little time. But I'd like to, as a kind of mum of two kind of quite old teenagers now, and when Jasmine and I and others first launched Friends of Marcus Garvey Library, they were kids. But I'd just like to talk about. I'm glad Mark mentioned the young people, and I know it's also a key part of the council's library strategy document. It is young people, but I think it's really important that everyone thinks about how this. I actually share some of the concerns that have been expressed about kind of othering other groups. I'm not comfortable with the way that kind of homeless people were talked about earlier, but with younger people at this library, there have also been issues about kind of access for services. A couple of years ago, in sort of early spring, not long before kind of a lot of kids take important exams, a notice went up outside the library, kind of introducing lots of kind of restrictions and suggesting that young people shouldn't come upstairs in the library. I have to say my son just ignored it when he came here to study for his exams. But you know, I mean, apparently there were difficulties caused by a specific group of young people. But I think we need to look at kind of all the different groups of people who need to use the library and kind of different services, and look at how if services have to be, if services are to be co-located, how that can be done sort of positively and planned properly. But we make sure it's not, it doesn't, because at the moment it feels like a conflict over space. There's only one toilet in the building that you don't have to ask the library staff to let you into. That's quite difficult for the kind of women and probably the men of a certain age.
Thank you. Okay, could we have responses? There's two questions.
I can't, in all honesty, give a guarantee in terms of the future. I mean, certainly, I think, as I've said, I think consultation is key, and genuine consultation is key. I've spoken about the kind of financial position in terms of the council and what I think needs to be kind of communicated out within the community. Certainly, I think there'll be a commitment to defend services, but ultimately, the council is, and I disagree with Councillor Brabazon on this. I'm not sort of saying, the council's going to be declared bankrupt overnight, but I think it's quite clear in terms of the trajectory. If something doesn't happen, the council could be in that sort of territory in a few years' time. And I think the thing to do is about the debt restructure. I think is crucial. That's my personal view. And I think the government can do that. And that money has been borrowed, as I'd actually agree with Councillor Brabazon, a great deal of it around sort of capital expenditure, which has actually been the council spending to save, because every time we build and house a family in a council home. It saves the council a lot of money. We need central government to give more kind of recognition to that and to support the council in doing that.
Briefly.
You know, they're not as we've settled our budget. The libraries are settled. We've got a strategy. I think that's probably it. I think we're all right. I don't think anybody wants to cut the libraries. Didn't want to do it in the first place. But the pressures on the budget, which I've described, have meant it had to take, and we held it off for years. We held off on the libraries as long as we possibly could. What is a good thing is that there has been a bias towards the libraries in the East in terms of the hours. So this library is still open 7 days a week, and the libraries that have taken, as I said, the bigger hit on the hours are the ones in the West. Having said that, look across the country, like I said before, and see what's happened to libraries being decimated. We haven't done that, and we have invested in them. So I don't think we do want to do any more cuts, and as we go towards the borough culture, it would be like shooting yourself in the head, really, wouldn't it? So I somehow don't think we're going to be doing that. I hope that gives you some reassurance. Well, Lucy's point about the library being for everybody, I agree with that. In this library, we did try to bring back the youth library, and there is a youth section. We've put in the music, it's called, I think it's called Liquid Logic or something. It's something to do with music production, and it's apparently state-of-the-art for young people who are doing their music exams. They can come here, and in fact, when we opened it, there were students here from Bladesmore who were doing their own composition, and it was really great. I think we have to make sure people know. I think there is an issue about people knowing what's available, that there's the pianos in the libraries, that we do the library lates. I think we should do more of that. That with gigs and things late at night for young people. You know, we have to entice people back to places, not just for study, but where they can enjoy themselves. It made me think, I've written a note down. We do have a very lively youth council in the borough now, which we've worked very hard to establish. And we have a youth leader and a youth cabinet. And I think what I'm going to do is set up a meeting with them to talk about their views about libraries, which we could encourage with Emily as the lead member, and then meet with the Friends of Libraries, because I don't suppose there are too many young people in Friends of Marcus Garvey or in FOR. So that would be an interesting discussion, I think. And so I talk to the Youth Council a lot, and I think we'll aim to try and get that happening. I think it would be a really interesting meeting.
Okay. Okay, Mary, just very, very quickly.
Can there be a named librarian whose role it is to encourage events and to be a liaison person? Because we tried, there was 2 volunteers to run a chess club. They came here in their own time to run a chess club, and then they dropped it because they just didn't have any minimal support from the library. They were not welcomed into the library by the staff.
Have you raised that before?
Sorry?
Have you raised that with Emily?
Jasmine will know more about that. But can there just be, just to support what you said?
Yeah,
I think everything you said is wonderful. It would be brilliant, but it would be so much easier if there was a named librarian who would be welcome, who would be empowered to do that, like Mark said.
It was raised with the officers at the time, and we were told that after the restructuring, when the plan went through for the chess clubs, that it would be dealt with again. So it's still there. It hasn't been dealt with.
Okay, so I'll follow that up with you.
Yeah. Okay.
I think there is a list of community librarians, though. There is a list in each of the libraries.
Yes, there used to be a librarian called Dawn. So people would be able to walk off the street and say to Dawn, I want to do an exhibition, I want to do this. Everybody knew her, and it would be organised. So there isn't a named person. That's what Mary is talking about, because that's what they used to be in the library. Okay, I think we've got to finish. Yeah. We've got to finish now. I just want to say, first of all, the list of names and contacts. Could people show me where it is, or pick it up and let me know where it is? Right. And then just to the candidates, I just want to make this final point. I do understand that the country is, I have to say the word, in a mess, financially, and socially. We are going through a period of great change, and I understand when you say that we're not sure about what's going to happen in the future. You're not sure financially. There's lots going on. There's wars, and rumours of wars, etc. Marcus Garvey, that's all going on in society. But I just want to make you aware of the fact, and you must know all this because you're all educated over here, that those people who set up the welfare state after the Second World War, they did not just do that automatically in a day. That was planned years and years and years ahead, so that when the opportunity came for them to implement that plan, it was able to be implemented. And there are a lot of intelligent people, clever people in the Labour, and I believe also maybe in the Conservative Party, who understood what the country needed. I think there is a little bit of a danger if you actually say, oh, it's not going to happen. In a way, you're pushing it down the road, when really, it's really important that you develop firm plans or ideas or visions of what you want to have, what you want this society to be like, so that when the opportunity comes, there's a plan and it's acted upon. Because when an opportunity comes for a plan to be acted upon, the plan that is available is acted upon. That is a fact. If you don't have nothing, if you say, oh, we don't know, we leave it, blah, 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 then we're just going to go round in circles. So I'm pleading with you to really have a strong vision. It's a very difficult and dark time. I agree with, I understand that totally. But we're looking for you, the community here, they all have a vision. People who come to our meetings, this development plan, it wasn't just one individual. People came and they had all their ideas. You've heard all the people speaking today. They're amazing people with amazing ideas in Tottenham. Have a plan, have hope. That's what I'm trying to say. Right? Really have hope, so that when the opportunity comes, you can implement that plan. We are thinking, that's why we have to think about the library being here in 100 years' time. What are we going to give to the next generation? We can't let them down, basically.
Can I, before you close, just to say, as a ward councillor of the party, thank you very much, Jeremy, and Jasmine yourself. That was a very good meeting that you organized, and together with all the other work you've been doing all this time, I think you are an asset to the area. Thank you very much.
I'd also like to say before he goes, Isidoros has been attending our meetings for 10 years. So I'm never going to forget your sigh. He said, oh my goodness, when you're rung up by the Friends of Marcus Garvey Library. So I'd really like to thank you for all the work that you put into and the ideas and what you've done for us. Right, thank you everybody, thank you for coming.